back to the Daily Arizona Update. Today is September 12th, and here are 13 things you should know about living in Arizona. We're going to be talking about the weather, the lifestyle, nature and scenery, cost of living, the job market from taxes and snowbird season, natural disasters, retirement, culture and sports, leisure, travel, everything that you could ever imagine. So how about we start with the most obvious one, which is weather. If you've heard anything about Arizona, you have heard about the weather. Let's start with this. Arizona is famous for its blue skies and endless amounts of sunshine. Winters, I would say, are pretty incredible. Evenings can be perfect, and the sunsets are just spectacular. But with all that sun, the heat comes somewhere, and it's right on our foreheads. Arizona is incredibly hot in the summer months, and with climate change, these months are lasting longer. This record here shows all-time highest temperatures, which was Lake Havasu in 1994. But Arizona specifically, in cities like Mesa, Chandler, Phoenix, you are getting these 120 days consistently. We are beating not the all-time high records, but we are beating records of consistently hot days as things have changed over time. This is a screenshot, how it is in September. I would say that they're being a little generous with the 84. To me, my GPS, or weather app rather, said it was 97 degrees today. So I'm not so certain where they are pulling this number from, but who is to say, right? It does say that winter here, this is what I want you to be looking at. High of 68, a low of 47. I mean, it is just beautiful. The spring, again, 68, 61, that's not so bad. I remember when I first moved here, it was around 5th, 6th grade or so. It was about halfway through the 5th grade year, so however you want to look at it. And this was coming from Utah, so I was in a place that was very cold all the time. Our summers, I think we were around the 80, 86s, and never paid attention. I used to complain about how hot it was, and that's until I realized what hot really was. But when I moved here, we would go to places like IHOP or Macayo's or, any of these, random sit-down restaurants, and I would be freezing in there, and I would say, I feel like I'm pretty good in the cold, but this place is frozen. Yet, when you move to Arizona, the minute you step outside, you defrost. So I get it now. Restaurants are freezing cold because it's an escape from the heat. Though, I want to say that we do a lot of things outside right now. This is a picture of myself at the Scottsdale Run Club, and this is a picture of the Tempe Town Lake. In Arizona, even in the summers, we were doing this in June, July, all of the months. If you go when it is sunset to nighttime, it's actually quite nice. The weather is still going to be 95, 97, 100, maybe even 105. But when the sun's down, it's not nearly as bad as you think it would be. Nights are some of the best places in the summer. And then obviously our winters are fantastic. Next up, we have the outdoor lifestyle, which is if you aren't really into doing things outside, Arizona is going to be a little bit trickier because we have 300 days of sunshine a year. So I almost feel guilty when I stay indoors. Sure, I'm working a lot and I stay indoors more than I'd like, but overall, I do enjoy a lot of what there is to do, like hiking, biking, there's golf, there's lakes. If you have off-road equipment, there's a lot of off-roading things you can do. Arizona has everything you need for outdoor living. These are some pictures that I took in Sedona. So this one was just one that I found online that is of Devil's Bridge. It is a fantastic area to go for hiking if you're anywhere in Sedona because it's one of those experiences that you get to have, though if I'm being honest, I was way too scared to actually cross the bridge. So instead, I got here with my 200 millimeter zoom lens and took photos of my friends. What is cooler when you are a group of, at this point, was teenage boys than pretending like you're falling off of this bridge? He was right in the corner here. So what's better than that? I don't know. The only issue with going on these hikes today is it has become way more mainstream, especially during tourist season. So this is from a TikTok video, which is someone on the bridge itself, which is them by themselves, this beautiful scenery, and then they start to pan the camera around, and they're moving and they're showing it. And then it shows a long line of people waiting for that same photo. So kind of funny, but still something that's a really cool experience to have, and a lot of us locals do. And that's just stuff that you do on the weekend. Sedona is just one spot. You can head up north even further and go to Flagstaff where there's pine trees and way cooler temps. I went there for the 4th of July parade. It was very nice weather. Or you can go south to Tucson where there's desert trails, there's Mount Lemmon. There is a lot to do between a 1 to 2 hour drive. You might be able to stay overnight and have it be some sort of weekend getaway in a sense, or you can just make it a day trip. Head out there, maybe you leave Phoenix around 6 a.m., you get there around 8:30, and then you head back around 3 to 5. We've done that trip plenty of times, and it is great. But again, on the flip side, if you're not someone who's into hiking and biking and trails and all these things, that might not be for you. The lifestyle in Arizona might be a bit trickier. Next up, we have the nature and scenery, which might be a little surprising for you. Typically, I'd say that Arizona is seen as a desert because, well, it is, obviously. But like I mentioned in the outdoor lifestyle part, there are a lot of places that you can go where you can still see all 4 seasons. This is a picture of Flagstaff with its snow. They have a snow bowl. The snow's not great. Utah says it has the, I think, world's greatest snow is on the license plate. I was there when I was younger, so I don't remember as much, but Flagstaff has to make some of its own man-made snow. It's not the world's greatest, but name a place where you can have 300 days of sunshine a year. You can drive 2 hours north and get to somewhere with snow. You can go 5 to 6 hours south or west and get to beaches. Or you can even just go an hour to Lake Havasu where you can enjoy the Colorado River and all there is to do. There's also the White Mountains and of course the Grand Canyon, which is one of the wonders of the world. Name another state that you can do all of that. I would find Arizona hard to beat. And by the way, real quick to interrupt the video, my partner and I are real estate professionals with over 1,000 transactions in the last 5 years alone. 600 of those have been on market, and another 400 have been off market, like fix and flips. So if you're looking for something in Arizona to buy or sell, there's a link in the description. We would love to help you out. Awesome, now back to the video. Now let's talk money and the cost of living. I actually have a full video about Gilbert specifically, so I wanted to put it in here because Gilbert is one of my favorite cities to live. Something about cost of living is interesting because if we compare it to another city like Phoenix or some places like Los Angeles and New Mexico, you'll see that obviously if you want to live in Gilbert versus LA, you don't need to make nearly as much. But if you wanted to live in Gilbert but were coming from somewhere like New Mexico or another rural state, you're going to have to make a good amount more, about 17.21% more income. Things that you're going to be looking at. We have hamburger prices here. They're slightly more expensive, but compared to New Mexico, you're going to be spending 16% more. How about things like shampoo? 15% more, 25% more on beauty salons. And then if you want to get a washer repair, you're going to save money. But then now go to newspapers and you're going 66% more. So the cost of living here is going to be a bit more. The biggest thing that I want to point you out in all seriousness, if I can even use the tools here, is housing cost. We have about 69% more expensive homes than if you're coming from New Mexico. But on the other hand, in LA, we are 45% cheaper. So it is all perspective. I just don't want you to be blindsided. Gilbert, again, one of the cities I love, has seen an increase in utility costs. So their water has gone up about $30 per bill. And SRP, one of the service providers for electricity, is also increasing prices. And with that, you have 2 different choices. So I mentioned SRP here because that is my favorite provider. We don't really have options. My mom lives in Texas and she talks about all the time that she is able to negotiate her electricity price with the provider because there are multiple options. Sure, when the winter comes and all the electricity breaks in Texas, how did that negotiation go when you have no electricity? So for us, it at least doesn't break, and it's not like LA where you stop service. But you don't really have a choice. Most places have SRP or they have APS. And APS, I've seen bills that have been $1,000 a month for the bill in the summer. It is absolute insanity. If you have APS and SRP as options, always go SRP. And if you are choosing between a home that is SRP or APS, if all things are created equal, I would always go with the home with SRP. So as a whole, Arizona may still be cheaper than places like California or Colorado, even in some of their areas like downtown, but just don't expect that Arizona is going to be this budget-friendly state like it used to be. You're not picking up homes for $60,000 to $40,000 to $100,000 like you used to, or even $200,000 like you used to in these millionaire communities 10 years ago. Things are a bit more expensive, and it's all comparable to where you're coming from. Speaking about where you're coming from, you might be considering in the taxes and how it compares to the state you're in today. So now let's talk about taxes. Taxes in Arizona are one of those mixed bag topics. On the positive side, property taxes here are relatively low compared to other places like Texas, which can be a big relief for homeowners and especially retirees. For a lot of retirees, you want to be able to lock in your costs. You don't want to have anything that's variable. And in Texas, your property taxes are some of the highest in the United States. You are the 7th highest here, only getting behind places like Illinois. You've got New Hampshire, Vermont, but for the most part, you are significantly higher. I mean, a full percentage compared to Arizona. So when you're a retiree, you really want to lock in these costs. So you might say that Texas has no income tax, but for most of the time, these retirees have more value in their property than they do in their income. So you want to be able to lock in that lower cost of living with our lower property tax. And as far as sales tax goes, we sit, I would say, somewhere in the middle. There are smaller percentage point changes that technically, yes, we are 11th, but we are relative to the rest of the United States only so different. These prices that you're getting on your sales tax are not nearly as high as it is on a property, especially as property values continue to rise. So if you're thinking about starting a business here, Arizona can be, again, kind of hit or miss like the sales tax. It's not as tax friendly for businesses like places like Texas, Nevada, or Florida even, but it's also not nearly as tough as California. And then back to the retiree section, you might be interested in, does your state tax Social Security benefits? For Arizona, it does not. So you have lower property tax and you have no tax on Social Security. Overall, the tax situation here is good, but it's not perfect. It's a pretty good middle ground for most people unless you have significantly higher income. That is where things might be a little tricky and for you to decide. Although if you're at that bracket, you might have plenty of tax strategies that can get you in a great spot, like cost segregation that is coming back with the big, beautiful bill. That is the name of it, I believe. Don't quote me on it. Now for the job market, we are seeing a lot of growth here through the semiconductor industry. We have places like TSMC opening up. We have Meta or Facebook. We have Virgin Galactic. We have Apple. We have a lot of places that are coming to the Valley. And those have just been in the last few years. We have Lucid Motors, who already has set up here. And we also have large tech companies that are already here like Amazon and GoDaddy. So that means there's a lot of opportunity in that tech space, but it is not just tech. We also have construction that is always moving. We have healthcare that is always expanding here. And we have logistic giants, like I mentioned earlier, Amazon, that are in the Valley. That means that there's opportunities in a lot of places besides tech, like there's trades and healthcare. That said, Arizona's economy can be a bit boom or bust, especially tied to real estate. When housing slows down, the industries around it tend to slow down as well. So while there's plenty of opportunity, it's worth knowing that not every job sector is going to be as stable year round. There are better months and better seasons to get into those industries. Overall, though, for people that are skilled in trades or tech or some sort of business, Arizona's job market is stronger than it's ever been in the last 5 years with all of these companies moving here. So it's one of the many reasons that people are relocating here, not just to live, but to work. Next, we have education, which is not going to be that great, if I'm being honest with you. I know that you care about your kids and you want the best. The downside of Arizona is we consistently rank near the bottom nationally for education. That means that there are bigger classrooms. That means that there's lower funding. The teachers are not getting paid nearly as much. And test scores that typically don't top other states. But that's all assuming that you go the public school route. During my high school graduating year, there was actually the Red for Ed movement that was happening to help support teachers' pay. And we had a very interesting senior season because we were lacking our teachers. Everyone was on strike. And that is one of the things that comes with being one of the worst school systems in Arizona. We are currently ranked 48th on Wallet Hub for a handful of different reasons. And one of those is we are tied for 47th in dropout rate. So if you go the public school route, it is a little bit lower. But if you're looking to go a different route and go into private schools, Arizona does have some of the top private schools in the nation. So we keep up there. The public education is just lacking for the last probably decade plus at this point. I would like to say though, I did go to a Gilbert public school system and I like to think that I turned out pretty okay. So take all that how you will. I think it's all what you make of it at the end of the day. Next up, we have Snowbird season. So this is going to be one of the most important parts when you are considering moving to Arizona, because not every state has to deal with this. For better or worse, we love you snowbirds, but this is something that's a little bit interesting. From fall to around spring, people flood from colder states into Arizona to escape the cold and the snow. We have a lot of Canada. We have a lot of New York. On one hand, it's kind of cool. The state has communities built specifically for this, and it brings a lot of energy to the area, especially in places like Scottsdale and the West Valley. It also helps out the economy a ton, but the downside is it brings an older generation of individuals who are not as familiar with the roads or even the construction that has evolved over time. AKA, they drive incredibly slow and they make me lose my mind. Restaurants also get packed and shopping becomes impossible in certain areas. For me, every time I go to Costco, it's right by my grandma's house. So I like to stop in there and then I go to the Costco, and this is the one on Sauceman if you're familiar with the East Valley, anyone here watching the video. The parking there, it's crazy. And it's not because the parking is full, but it's because trying to get parked is nearly impossible. There's a bunch of speed bumps. A lot of the older drivers will just stop randomly as they're looking for parking spots. It's really tight roads, so they turn really slow. Most of the time, they're parked crooked. It's just a mess. So depending on your perspective, snowbird season is either a perk of Arizona life or it is a more frustrating time of year. Something that's funny is there are always TikToks about snowbirds. This one says how to tell when snowbirds are back. So this is actually a moment where there is it's harder to see here, but it's a multi-light system, and technically this is not an area that you should be stopped in. So the lights are kind of out of frame near the top. The pen that I'm using right now is a little bit hard to see. They're like up here, back more, right? It's hard to tell. But what's happening is as all these cars are going, you can see this truck, this car's just stopped right in the middle of the road. And then as they're all leaving, this guy's just stuck in the middle of the road. And he says it's honestly a miracle that they make it home every single day. It's hard to know for sure if there's a snowbird or not, but it is funny. Next up, we have natural disasters, which when I lived in Utah, my mom was talking about that she found out over the news at some point in Utah there was going to be this major earthquake. So we were doing these earthquake drills and we were standing up the parts of the stairs and going in the, the tub if anything were to happen, because you just want to make sure that we were safe. And then eventually I ended up moving to Arizona, and I was like, do we need to do all these things still? And the answer was no, because we have almost no natural disasters. We don't really deal with hurricanes because, well, there is no water. We don't deal with earthquakes, and we don't really deal with tornadoes. I think you're going to see a graph here that there are only 5 tornadoes in a full year, and I'm sure those are more dust storms somewhere in a far vacant away land that we never even hear about. So for the most part, the only things that we have are monsoons / haboobs, and we have wildfires. For the most part, these wildfires are up north in Flagstaff, but we have had some more locally in the valley, and those were dark days. So the biggest thing to worry about, I would say, is monsoons and haboobs. Within minutes, these are storms that turn into massive clouds of dust. As you can see, it is just this wall of dirt that comes and takes over all of its surroundings, and it comes really quick. If you are in the road and you see one coming, it is likely going to hit you in 5 to 10 minutes. It can be a little scary if you're driving, not because the dust itself, it's not that damaging if you're inside your car. Sure, it's not great, and we would all love it to not hit our car, but it's not these massive rocks. It's just messy. The biggest issue is user error. People will try to drive, but there is no visibility, and then sometimes they can bump into the car in front of them if they're not good at gauging distance. So that is the biggest issue with them. The good news is the worst natural disaster that we have typically brings rain, which we all appreciate because we get so little of it, and it only lasts like a minute or two. They are pretty in and out. Next up, we have retirement lifestyle. Arizona and Scottsdale specifically actually just got ranked the #1 best city to retire in America, with Scottsdale coming in at #1. So if you're looking to retire, Arizona has one of the greatest lifestyles. The weather is warm, the cost of living is somewhat reasonable compared to places like California, and there are entire communities designed around retirees. Sun City, for example, was one of the first big retirement communities in the country, and it's still thriving today. There are golf courses everywhere, there's pickleball courts that are packed, and the pace of life in these areas is slower and relaxed. On top of that, remember what we talked about earlier, Arizona does not tax your Social Security benefits, so this makes it even more attractive if you're on a fixed budget. Of course, retirement retirement life in Arizona isn't for everybody. Summers can be intense, and if you're not used to the heat and healthcare access, it kind of varies depending on where you live. But if you want a community that is catering to retirees' activities, clubs, and the sunshine, Arizona can be one of those places for you. You can see this graph here that talks about the best and worst states for retirement. Arizona is ranking higher on the list. Yes, there are no metrics and there is no source, so who knows who made this, but I would like to think that it wasn't someone incredibly biased. Who knows? I'm sure it is an Arizona publication. It just is one of those things. So next up, we have travel and leisure. This is an interesting one because Arizona, like I mentioned, is really close to a lot of places. If you want to go up north, you have Flagstaff. If you want to go further north, you have Utah, which is only about 12 hours away. Then if you want beaches, you can go to San Diego here, which is about a 5-hour and 27-minute drive. You can even go down to Mexico, which is only going to be, GPS says 3 hours and 41 minutes, but realistically, you're going to be stopped at the border, so you're probably going to be there for a little bit longer than you'd like, but it is still incredibly close. If you're looking for serious entertainment and nightlife, you have Las Vegas, which is only about 5 hours away. Then you can go down to Tucson, which is only 2 hours away. All of these places are near you. You could even go to Colorado if you wanted to. That would be a little bit more of a drive than I would want to do. But Phoenix has so much proximity to cool things without having to pay the cool things tax, which is California is extremely expensive. So I'd rather pack some sandwiches and go to a hotel for a weekend than live in it full time a year. Even in Arizona itself, you can do road trips to places like Jerome or Bisbee, and like I mentioned earlier, Flagstaff. You really never run out of spots to go to. The mix of local beauty and regional access makes it a big win for people who love to explore. Last up here, I want to go over sports and culture. Arizona is a big sports culture because we used to have 4 teams. We had football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. And that was one of the rare states that did have 4 teams. But now the hockey team has left, so we only have the Cardinals, Phoenix Suns, and the Diamondbacks. For the NFL, the Cardinals are on a rebuild. It is what it is. We used to be good with Kurt Warner and Larry Fitzgerald, and now we're trying to rebuild around Kyler Murray. We'll see what happens. The Suns, they're doing pretty well. We got D-Book, we got Kevin Durant, we got Bradley Beal. I believe that's who that is. I'm not as familiar with basketball. And then the Diamondbacks were in the World Series in the last few years. So overall, Arizona has some pretty competitive sports. And if you want other things, there is also car clubs. Arizona's car culture is huge. There is everything from classic shows at Highline Street, and there's even car YouTubers like the Stradman who are opening up restaurants here in Arizona. There is now Strad Pizza. So if you're looking for either sports or car culture, there is anything that you need here. There are more than enough BMW or Porsche Canyon clubs. There's also an MX-5 group, which I am going to join at some point. Go Miatas, I love them. So overall, Arizona has a lot of culture and a lot of sports for you if that is something that you're into. Arizona as a whole, from brutal summers and rising utilities, there comes with breathtaking scenery and endless outdoor activities. The state is a mix of extremes. Some people thrive here and others can't take the heat. Literally, they can't take it. But if you're prepared for the challenges and everything that Arizona has to offer, it is hard to beat. And as always, if you are interested in buying or selling real estate in Arizona, me and my partner would love to help. There is a form in the description below. It is www.livingphxmetro.com/YouTube. And I will see you on the next Arizona Daily Update. Peace, y'all.